Hi guys, my name is Kayla. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel if you've been here before. Thanks so much for coming back and supporting me, and I'm very excited to share my next video with you guys. Actually, today's video is going to be a little bit less exciting, I guess, than the first one. Not that the first one was super exciting, but this one's going to be a little bit more somber, just because of the subject matter we're covering. So if you want to stay tuned and find out basically how I got diagnosed with stage 3 cancer at the age of 21, then definitely watch this video. By the way, I don't know if you noticed, but I got new lighting! Yay! Honestly, I couldn't afford the full-sized one because I just quit my job because I'm back in school. So I got the cell phone one. So today I'm trying out recording on my cell phone instead of my DSLR. As you can see, my tripod back there. So if I tend to look away like this, it's just because I'm not used to talking into my phone instead of a camera. It's a little bit different setup for me. And I know this background is still a bit, I'm not going to say weird because I think it's a good background. I'm actually in my studio in my basement right now, which is why I'm wearing a scarf because it's freezing cold. But I still haven't found a place for us to do our story time and our videos yet. So for now, we're going to be in my studio. All right. Let's get into the video. It all started in 2014. So it was, I think it was like early October. I was coming home from a morning class and I came home and shut the door. And as soon as I shut the door, I heard this loud crash and I was like, oh no. First of all, I thought there was a robber in my house, but there wasn't. So I walk around the corner and I'm looking around in the living room, and above my TV in the living room, we have a shelf with some like decor on it, and I noticed that a glass vase was missing. And you know, this glass vase was important to my parents because it's kind of the first piece of art that they ever bought, like as a, I think when they were first married or when they were just before they were married. I look behind the TV and it's shattered all behind the TV, all over the place. And I was really curious, like, you know, how did this happen? And I guess, I don't know. I was really stunned because I didn't know how it fell, but I'm just assuming that the vibration from slamming the door kind of pushed it off the shelf little by little every day, probably for weeks, until it fell over the edge. Otherwise, I can't explain it. Maybe it was a ghost. I don't know. So I pull out the TV. It's like a corner TV, so I'm vacuuming behind it, whatever. Everything's good. A couple days later, closer to Halloween, I went to the movies with my best friend and my boyfriend, and we went to see Gone Girl, and it was an evening show, and we were supposed to go to dinner after. So as we're getting into the theater, we're getting snacks or tickets, whatever, I sit down, and all of a sudden, I feel this ripping pain through my chest. And I don't know how to describe it to you guys more clear. It was like, there's two things. First thing, it felt like someone was literally stabbing you and then ripping the knife like down through your chest every time you breathed. And then the second feeling, every time I breathed in deeply, it was like a sharp, almost like your last breath. Like if you were underwater too much and then you came up and you took a big breath and it like that sharpness. So it's kind of a combination of those two things. And I was thinking, I was like, what did I do? What did I do? I'd never felt this kind of pain before, and I've had a lot of lung issues, but this was something that I'd never experienced before in terms of the feeling and sensation and the pain. The only pain that this reminded me of was a pulled muscle. So I was thinking to myself, how could I pull a muscle in my chest, literally like either my lung muscle or behind my lung? And I thought back, what did I do? I vacuumed behind the TV. And I know you're thinking like, oh, Kayla, like vacuuming shouldn't pull a muscle. But guys, I was vacuuming behind the TV at this like super high, awkward angle because I couldn't pull the TV out from the corner because it was too heavy. So I was trying to like, I guess, bend over the TV. And I was just thinking, okay, I must have pulled a muscle while I was vacuuming. So I'm like, okay. So we're sitting through the movie and I have to like, we're sitting through the movie. And honestly, I had to position myself in the most uncomfortable way, as if I was like squeezing through a tunnel or something. I had to sit kind of on the left side of my body and turn the right side forward to alleviate some of the pressure. I don't know how it did that, but it did. Alleviate some of the pressure, and I had to take really shallow breaths and not breathe deeply and just drink water slowly and slowly and slowly. So it was a long movie. I think it was like 2.5 hours or something. Good movie. Really good movie. I really liked it. So then we were supposed to go out afterwards, but that didn't end up happening because I was in so much pain. So dropped my friend off. My boyfriend took me home. I took 2 extra strength Advil and I put 2 heat packs. I heated them up and put them on my body. And I was just in so much pain. My boyfriend didn't want to leave me, but he had to go home. So another couple days pass, and then I start having these breathing problems. And essentially, I wish I had a plastic bottle to make the noise, but if you could imagine a plastic water bottle being, an empty plastic water bottle being twisted and scrunched up, that's the sound you could hear every time I breathe. And you didn't have to be far away. Like, this camera is like an arm's length, so 2 feet away from me. You could have been 1 or 2 feet away from me and you would hear this sound. And even further, like a couple feet away, you could hear this horrible, like, crunching noise every time I inhaled. So my mom was like, that's it. We are going to the hospital. I don't know what you did, but we need to get this checked out. So first we went to a walk-in clinic. That was an evening clinic, so there was no one there. So we walked in. Doctor listened to my chest, freaked out, was like, you need to go to the hospital right now. I don't know what this is. It doesn't sound like pneumonia or asthma or whatever. He didn't really think it was a pulled muscle either, but he's like, I don't even know because I can't see anything. And he didn't want to give me any antibiotics in case it was something else. So he sent me to the hospital. Well, if you're from Canada, you know this. We have really long wait times at the hospital because we have not free, but we have public health care. So when you go to the hospital for a problem, you're basically put in line, put in a queue, and it's basically the most pressing things first. But if they're really busy and there's very few doctors on staff, then it's just kind of by order. And typically young people are kind of seen at the end because it's like, oh, you're young, like, you're fine, you can handle it. So at the hospital, get checked in, triage, they ask me these questions, I describe the pain again, they do blood work, then I sit in the waiting room for like 3 hours with my mom, then we go get chest x-rays, and I go back to the waiting room and sit for another 2 hours. It's like 2 a.m. at this point. And I was like, oh my God, I have to go to school tomorrow. It was a big issue. So finally, the doctor calls us to like the hallway and stands in front of a computer and shows us my x-rays. And he says, everything looks to be pretty good. We don't see anything. And I'm like, are you serious? And he listened to my chest and he's like, yeah, I can hear it, but there is nothing there. Like, there's nothing wrong with your lung or the muscles or anything. And I'm like, so what's making this noise? He's like, we're not really sure, but your scans are, we're not really sure, but your x-rays look good. So we're going to send this to the radiologist to compare with any of your previous x-rays that you've had here and just take a closer look. And if anything shows up, like, we'll let you know. And I was like, okay. So I went home. And that was that. A few more days passed, and I was at work one day, and I was at my other job. I worked at the art gallery within the University of Toronto, the Mississauga campus, the Blackwood Gallery, which you guys should definitely check out if you're ever in Mississauga. I'll link it down below. I was working, and I got a phone call that I needed to go in for a CT scan. And I was like, okay. So next day comes, and I go get my scan done. And if anyone's ever had a CT, it is the most annoying process ever. I mean, there's probably other ones out there, but this was one of the most annoying ones. Essentially, you have to drink this container. It's like, I don't know, a liter and a half maybe, of this powdery, milky, I don't know, syrup. And it kind of tastes like orange crush, like just a little bit, enough to make it seem even more disgusting. And after you drink it, you go and lie in a machine. And they give you dye through an IV in your arm that basically acts as a contrast against the milky stuff that you drank. So it lights up parts of your body, like your stomach and your organs and stuff, so that they can get a clearer picture. It's pretty cool. So I drink the nasty drink. I'll insert a picture here of how big it was. Drink that thing. Then I go get my scan. And as I'm lying there, over the intercom, the nurse says, we're about to put the dye in. It's going to feel hot and like you peed your pants. And I was like, okay. Sure enough, She starts to die, the machine starts, I'm getting my scan, my whole body gets really hot, like I'm lying in the sun, 30-degree weather, and 100% feels like I peed my pants, which I did. So I get my CT scan, and then here's where things get a little bit more intense, I guess. So after my CT scan, they hand me this booklet, which kind of looks like this. And they're like, take this, and a respirologist, which is a lung doctor, is going to give you a call in a few days to make an appointment. And I was like, okay. So I go home, and of course, being, what was I, 21, and curious, I opened, it was a stapled shut package. I opened it, and I read it, and I still have it, actually. So this is the package that I got, and I'm going to read you guys what it says. There is evidence of anterior mediastinal confluent masses from the level of the manubrial sternal notch down over the pericardium, especially to the right side. One large mass superiorly measures 8.3 by 5.5 centimeters. So there's some other stuff written on the page that I'm not going to read out because it's just a lot of big words and I don't want to think about them again. But essentially, they saw some masses along my collarbone. One of them was basically 8.5 centimeters wide, which is about the size of an orange, with a bunch of other little ones kind of on both sides, heavily though on the right side, which was on this side. So at this point, I don't even know. It's so hard talking about this now. This was almost 3 years ago now. It's hard thinking back to that time and what I felt, but I guess part of me was curious. I'm very interested always. I've always been very interested in medical stuff. I don't know. And a lot of my art actually was based on medical things and the human condition, etc. I guess this is going to sound really bad, but I guess I was not surprised when I read this. I'd had different side effects, I'd had different symptoms for a couple years leading up to this that, to be honest, have nothing to do really with lymphoma as like the sign symptoms, like the major symptoms. But after doing some extended research, the symptoms that I did have did indicate that there were problems, and I was ignored over and over again by the doctors. And I'm not going to get into that in this video because I'm just going to get upset and go on a rant, and that's not what this video is about. So we can talk about that another time. If you guys are interested, you can let me know in the comments below. Getting back to the story, after my CT scan and after reading this, I had an appointment with a respirologist where he pre-diagnosed me with possible lymphoma. In his exact words, he said, this is a 90% chance of lymphoma, but we won't know what kind or how extensive until we do a few more tests. Great. So in the weeks to follow, I had a biopsy done on just above my collarbone, which essentially they froze me and then put this kind of little grabby claw into one of the masses and like took samples. It's kind of like, you know, at the arcade when you put the coins into the machine with the hand that picks up a toy. Essentially, that's what it was, but a little machine. And as they were taking the biopsy, I was looking at the screen to see. They were using an ultrasound to basically guide them. And I could see, basically, it looked like a string of pearls along my collarbone, but much bigger. It was like this. So I asked the doctor who was doing it. I was like, well, how does it look? And he's like, he turns to me and he's like, it doesn't look great, but we're gonna take care of you. And I was like, cool. So it was basically at this point that I was like, okay, yeah, I have cancer, but I still didn't know what kind exactly and how bad it was. And like, I guess the biggest question, why or how, which I would find out later. So after that biopsy, I went to an oncology hospital. That's not a thing. I went to a cancer hospital in Etobicoke, Queensway Medical Center, where they deal with, essentially, it's more of a women's clinic, but because I was a young adult, or I am a young adult, I was 21, they sent me there because the next closest hospital was Princess Margaret, which is in downtown Toronto, and that was a little bit out of the way for me. So they sent me there, and after talking to my oncologist there, I was then sent for a PET scan, which essentially is the same idea as a CT scan. It takes a photo of your whole body, but what it does instead of a CT is it actually lights up the areas that are cancer. So when you go get a PET scan, it's like a 2-hour process. So you go, you can't eat or drink anything. They, again, give you this nasty drink. It's not as bad as the CT one, but it's so gross. They give you this drink to drink, and then they inject you with nuclear medicine, which essentially is like, I don't really know. It's like a dye as well, but I think it's based more off of sugar. So what it does is it lights up the parts of your body that has cancer, because if you didn't know, cancer feeds off of sugar, one of the main things. So this nuclear dye has like a sugar substance or something in it, so that when it's injected into you, the cancer kind of starts eating it, and then it lights up on the screen when they take the photo of your body. So I had that PET scan done, which took 2 hours, and sure enough, when I went back to my oncologist, it was lit up, not like a Christmas tree, but this whole part was lit up and quite bright. So that was basically my official, you have cancer diagnosis. And after that, they had to determine how far I had gotten. So essentially what stage I was. And to do that, they had to do a bone marrow biopsy. And we're not going to get into that today because that is a painful story to tell. And I don't want to get into that right now. Essentially, they have to do a bone marrow biopsy because the bone marrow is where lymphoma can spread to, or it can start from. And essentially, if it gets to your bone marrow, it will spread throughout your whole body because the marrow is it's the core of your bones. So it's throughout your entire body. Thankfully, after my bone marrow biopsy, it came back negative, and I found out that I didn't have anything in my bone marrow, but I was still classified as stage 3 because the cancer was all on my collarbone, and it was suspected to be a little bit under my diaphragm near my spleen. And I say suspected because there was some controversy between a few different doctors on whether it was actually cancer there or whether it was just some, they call them baby spleens or something like that. Essentially, it's just another segment of your spleen that can sometimes react to the PET scan medication. But this particular oncologist wanted to be safer, better safe than sorry. So she staged me as stage 3, type A, classical Hodgkin's lymphoma. And what type A means is that I had no typical symptoms related to lymphoma. So I did have some issues that were happening and some symptoms, but they, at this point, were not related to my lymphoma whatsoever. So type A means basically you had no idea. And I didn't. And I remember that day really clearly. It was November 21st, 2014. It was my sister's birthday. And it was a beautiful fall day, and I was sitting in this doctor's office getting diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. And I guess I was just, shock isn't the right word, because like I said earlier in the video, I kind of had this underlying feeling like, well, I kind of suspected something, but I didn't suspect this. And considering, yes, I didn't have great lungs, but I was and am a super healthy, food conscious, naturalistic, holistic type of person. I'm not saying this very well, but you get what I mean. And I was like, really? Like, I am the last person that should be getting this. Like, I don't smoke. I don't do drugs. I don't drink excessively. I'm healthy. Like, what? Anyways, so after my diagnosis, we went and celebrated my sister's birthday. And, I mean, I was very optimistic. And I was in university still, obviously. And I was like, you know what? This is not going to define me. I am going to go to school. I'm going to keep one of my jobs. I couldn't, unfortunately, keep the other job because I was working in a pool with kids. I'm going to keep my job. I'm going to go to school, and I'm going to graduate with everyone. I was determined that no matter what, graduation was my goal. That was my goal throughout the whole thing, is just get to graduation. And I was in 4th year, which ideally is supposed to be, I think, your last year of university. But I had already discovered earlier on that I was going to do a 5th year. So I'd already planned out my schedule that way, which was really good for me, because it gave me a little bit of wiggle room in terms of classes and assignments when I got diagnosed. But yeah, I've tried to film this video for you guys 3 times, and I was just too emotional on the other one, so I finally got my act together today and did it. And I know it's okay to show emotion, but this was not the hardest time, so I wanted to maybe just talk about it. I mean, I'm still emotional right now. But I don't show my emotions very well in that sense, so it's kind of internal. But yeah, that's basically it. That was my diagnosis. Very anticlimactic, I guess. And they still, to this day, don't know what was wrong with my lung. I don't know if that was a sign from something of a higher power. I don't necessarily have one set thing I believe in, but I do believe in some kind of higher power, spirituality. So maybe it was a sign to go to the hospital, to make me go to the hospital. And I mean, this one tumor was 8.5 centimeters. That's huge. That was growing in me for at least a year with no symptoms. Imagine if I hadn't gone. I can't even imagine where I'd be at today in my life if I hadn't gone to the hospital that day, and if that doctor in the clinic didn't tell me there is something wrong, you need to go get this checked out, and if my mom didn't take me. And I'm very grateful for that. And my mom actually went back to that clinic and thanked the doctor and said, you basically saved my kid's life. So yeah. Anyways, that's it for today's video, guys. Sorry, it's a little bit of a downer video at the end, but I mean, I'm not going to say I hope you enjoyed, but I hope it maybe taught you something, or you learned something, that your body knows when something's wrong, or something knows, and it's going to try and help you. I really truly believe in that. Being someone who is very body conscious, in terms of I'm very connected to my body and I know when something is wrong. If you like my video, please subscribe and give it a thumbs up. And let me know what you guys want to see in the next video. I'm also going to put a link down in the comments for my blog where I actually wrote basically weekly what happened during my first year of treatment. So if you guys want to go read that, you can definitely check it out. And that would be cool. I'm going to be talking about a lot of this stuff in the next couple of videos. But if you want to just read it and get a head start, then that would be amazing. And thanks so much for showing me your support. And I'm really excited to continue this journey with you. And sorry this video is late. It's finals week and I'm in graduate studies and I am just drowning in homework. It literally owns me right now. So I gotta go get back to that. So thanks so much for watching. And honestly, for me, I want you guys to all remember that it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to not be the same person that you were